So this is Miracles in Manhattan. I'm John Mundy. This is February 2018. We have kind of a broad topic for today. I want to be talking about the ego again, and the nature of reality again, and understanding what the atonement is, and just sort of a potpourri, but looking at a lot of things that have been on my mind. It's sort of fun to do this because I get to put ideas down and play with them for a little bit and then share them with you. So it forces me. I used to enjoy being a minister because it meant that once a week you had to sit down and put your ideas together and then present them to some other people in a reasonable, understandable sort of way. So that's kind of what the same thing that we're doing now, except I get to go longer. There's no restrictions about 20 minutes or 25 minutes or whatever it is. So let's start getting into the course. Before that, a couple announcements that would be good for everyone. My friend David Fishman and I of the One Mind Foundation are sponsoring a retreat on Columbus Day weekend in October. You can go to our website and find out more information about it. We have flyers here on the chairs, and we got a really nice lineup of presenters. You can either stay 2 days or 3 days because Monday is a holiday. You have that option of hanging over if you wish to. I really look at this as an opportunity for all of us to kind of get to know each other outside of a classroom. The atmosphere there is such that you can just go get a cup of coffee for free and sit down and talk with some other students. And we're going to be talking about this a little bit this morning, but this is all about relationship. The whole course is about relationship. It's about our getting along with each other, but it's more than getting along with each other. It's about really recognizing that this other person and myself, that we are one, literally one. The whole idea the theme for the conference is going to be awakening to the one mind. So that means there is one mind, which we would think of as the mind of God. But in order to know that one mind, we know that one mind by being able to see that in our brothers and sisters. So that there's literally no difference. So we're going to be talking about judgment a bit today as well, as the thing that blocks us or keeps us from being able to have that kind of connection. So we'll start looking at some slides. So I started this one because last night my wife and I, Dolores, we went to see The Shape of Water. I don't know if any of you, some of you are getting nods that you have seen it. And what I liked about it, which is what anybody could like about it, was that it was a love story. And it's a love story where actually in the end, what matters is that they are together, right? The two lovers are together. And that's and the Course is really asking us that we all come together in our minds, that we not see separation, that we not see difference, that we not see problems, because if we're going to be God-like, God sees all of us the same. God doesn't see any difference amongst His children. Even amongst those who are, well, what could we say, wayward? By that I mean really kind of gone off on to some deep end. We've been talking a little bit about my friend, Bob Durst, who is a serial killer. But God loves Bob, and just as God loves everyone. And it's our job to do that too. Sometimes it's hard to love the unlovely. But the Course is saying you can do that. You can reach through and send that love out to everyone, regardless of the circumstances. So the movie last night got me thinking about, my wife didn't enjoy it as much as I did because it was science fiction, in part. Sort of science, she didn't care for science fiction. But if you think about what the Course in Miracles is saying, it sounds like science fiction. I mean, there's a certain sense in which it's talking a lot about what reality is and what it says. We're going to read a slide in a moment that says what reality is and what you think reality are, they're not the same. It's not about politics. That's not about reality. It's not about the world. It's not about the outside. It's not about what's going on within the dynamics of our relationships, except insofar as we need to heal them. It has nothing to do with things like money or things or anything like that. It's about literally, again, remembering there's one mind. And that's the only place that we can be at peace, is when we're back. And there's no one, of course, there's no one who doesn't have at some time some sense of that memory, some sense of wholeness. The thing is being able to get to that place and hold on to it and stay there all the time, which is what we think of as what happens with enlightened figures like a Jesus or a Buddha or someone who was able to remember, to awaken to the one mind. So it looks like maybe, we don't know exactly what happens with Steve Jobs when he died, but the word is that his last words were, "Oh, wow, wow, wow." Right? And anybody who's had a near-death experience that can tell us about it, inevitably say, well, one of the things that they say is they didn't want to come back here. I mean, they didn't want to have to come back into, first of all, the body, because the body is actually heavy, it's very mundane, it's a lot of work. There is a sense in which we seem to be trapped in it. In terms of the Course's point of view, there's a reason that you got this body. We, each of us, have chosen this school, this path, so we're here to learn something. And the best thing you can do is do what you're doing, which is study this material or any material that's like this. The Course says that there are many thousands of pathways back to God again, and there are many, many thousands of pathways. So it is by the Course of Love says that as well, that there's many, many pathways. And certainly our judgment about another person's pathway would be a misperception on our part. You never know what's going to work for somebody else that probably might not work for you, right? You may take a more fundamentalist religious position, for example, where no one is excluded. So that's, I need to do this myself. Roger Ebert, you probably heard about Roger Ebert's last words, right? You all remember who Roger Ebert was. Robert Ebert was a film critic, a very popular one, had a show for many, many years on television, what was his partner's name?
Siskel.
What? Siskel?
Gene Siskel.
Yeah, Gene Siskel, right. And he had cancer of the jaw, so he lost his jaw, but that's why his picture looks the way it does, but that was most recent. And apparently, his wife, whose name was Chaz, said that the day before he died, he could no longer really talk, but he could still text. And he texted to her, "It's all an elaborate hoax." And she said to him, "What's a hoax?" And he said, what he wants to find, the world, this place. And it's actually, that's why when you look at something like a science fiction, it looks like a fiction, but this all looks like a science fiction. It's all a hoax. This is not reality. Put it simply enough. There is reality. And I think the easiest word that we could use for that would be heaven, or love, or truth, or eternity. And that's what it's really about. That's why I think the show touched me, The Shape of Water, because as I said earlier, it's about love. It's a love story where there's a complete commitment. And there's a sense, too, with the mystics. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention the fact. Let me get this and just show you real quick. I don't know how this happened in the same week, but I got 2 new books out. Right? So this one has been, it's called Mysticism and Miracles, and it's really a book about mysticism, but I threw so many quotes from A Course in Miracles in it that I said to the publishers, look, I think we should call this Mysticism and A Course in Miracles. They said, well, we'll call it Mysticism and Miracles. They go along with that. And then this one I think I had 3 weeks ago for you. This is called A Course in Miracles. And this is an anthology. I didn't write all of this. I only wrote a couple chapters. The rest of it was written by people who are subscribers to Miracles Magazine. This started about 10 years ago, putting this together. But this is it's taking off kind of nicely. Each chapter is about A Course in Miracles and Yoga, A Course in Miracles in Buddhism, A Course in Miracles in Hinduism, A Course in Miracles in Alcoholics Anonymous, A Course in Miracles in Freud or Jung or one of those different topics. So during the break, take a look, or look on Amazon's got it, or the standard places. Okay. So let's go on with this. This is from the Course now, chapter 18. For those who are listening, we're in New York City, and you're you're getting a little bit of New York City in the background right now. So it says, you may be surprised to hear how very different is reality from what you see. You do not realize the magnitude of that one error. Now you know what the error was, right? Just to review in case you don't know what the error was. The error was a decision that we all made to leave home. To say to God, thank you very much, God, I'd rather do it myself. And God, being completely benevolent and does not deny his children's wishes, even the wishes that he knows are going to take them far afield and into a strange land. That's kind of one of the ways I think science fiction-wise you could sort of think of this whole world thing. Anybody read Stranger in a Strange Land many years ago? Michael has, right? So we're all kind of strangers in a strange land. And there are a lot of mythologies, Pilgrim's Progress, John Bunyan, several others, are about how we're all sojourners here. We came into this world and we are seeking, looking, and the Course is the best, clearest explanation of how this all happened and how we can get home as smoothly as we can. But the but is, it takes work. It really takes a lot of work to, first of all, to unwind the mind, which is a title of one of my friends, David Hoffmeister's book, and to get back to the realization of the truth of who we really are. What happens with a lot of us is that we just get caught in what the Course calls a dreaming of the world, and then we dream. We dream the world. We dream the world away, and we don't realize that it's not real. Except there's a really good hint about it, which is that when you have a real dream, like there's really a dream. All dreams are fantasies, and all dreams are fleeting, passing. They don't last very long. So when you have a dream at night, and then you wake up in the morning, and you just sort of dismiss the whole thing. Oh, that was sort of strange. Can you imagine that when we leave this dream, when we leave this world, we sort of think, well, that was interesting, or that was quite an adventure, but that was also a dream. Meaning, a lot of times we can go, thank God, thank God that wasn't it. Thank God that's not what heaven is. That's not what reality is. So let's read a little bit further with this, right? It was so vast and so completely incredible that from it a world of total unreality had to emerge. So this is the world of total unreality. This is a dream. And then those dots just mean we skipped a sentence. But nothing you have seen begins to show the enormity of the original error, which seem to cast you out of heaven, to shatter knowledge into meaningless bits of disunited perception, and to force you to make further substitutions. So what's happened, of course, is that we created our own world. We all dream our own dreams. We create our own realities. Actually, we have two realities in the sense of there's the reality that we create in terms of our vision, our sense of the world, and then there's the reality that we share. That's a united reality or a mythology. And every culture and every society does that. You know, wherever you are, there's a myth that we sustain, that the culture sustains. And if you violate that myth sometimes, then let's say you grew up Catholic and there's a whole mythology around what the Catholic Church has taught you. And now you slowly begin to awaken, as many people do, to the reality of the fact, well, that's not, that law, that creed, those dogma, those are silly. There's no suffering, dying, bleeding person on a cross. That's something very clear that the Course says. So let's go on. So since the separation, defenses have been used almost entirely to defend against the atonement and thus maintain the separation. So let's talk for a moment about what the atonement is. The atonement is the process by which we undo the dream, or by which we let go of the drama. I think we talked about this once before. Stavros, I remember asking this question. When you read the word atonement in A Course in Miracles, substitute the word undoing, and it will still read just fine. So we're undoing. We're undoing an illusion. We're undoing a complexity. We're awakening from the dream in that process. So that's what the atonement is. So it says defense against the atonement. So when we have a defense against the atonement, it really means we're resistance. We're resisting going home. And one of the biggest ways that is manifest is because the ego, in terms of the Course says, the ego has identified this body as your home. Now your home, you think, in this world, in this body, in this time, all of which is an illusion. The body, time, and the world itself. Right? But the big one is this. Whoa. This body itself. We really think that this is who we are. And yet again, when you read near-death experience reports, a lot of people are going to say, thank God that was not real. Thank God I'm out of that thing, out of that body that I seem to identify with so much money, for one thing, is spent on the body, right? Think about how much we spend on decorating it and clothing it and cleaning it and feeding it and dressing it up so that the world can like what it sees, right? Or so that we can like what we think the world likes what we see, right? All right, so to go on with this. So this is generally seen as a need to protect the body. That's the defense. The defense is that we need to protect this thing. We don't want it to get hurt or damaged anyway, but it's also more than that, because it's seeing as the ego's chosen home, we're defending the ego. That's why in psychology talks about what it calls ego defense mechanisms. We got a lot of mechanisms, projection, denial. We'll talk about some of these as we go on today. So the many body fantasies in which mind engages arise from the distorted belief that the body can be used as a means for attaining atonement, that the body can be used. So what it means by saying that the body can be used is it means that you can get what you want in this world. So all you have to do is just get enough money. Or all you have to do is just be pretty enough, or handsome enough, or live in the right place, or have an ideal family, or any of the definitions of what the world would say is a constituent of success. I think I told you a little bit once before about a friend of mine. You can look him up on the YouTube as well. John Mark Straub, S-T-R-U-B, who had an experience of enlightenment. And his experience of enlightenment really came because he got whatever, he got it. He went to the top of his field, and he left that and became an entrepreneur, and went to the top of being an entrepreneur, and realized that this wasn't it. So then he found the Course in Miracles, and then he began to do something the Course talks about that's very important, we should all begin to do. He began to hear. He began to hear another voice, right? Not the voice of the ego, which was encouraging his drive toward external success, but another kind of voice which was awakening him to, the first thing was awakening him to realizing how judgmental he was. And in order to stop all that judgment. We'll talk about that more later too. Okay, let's go on with this. So since the separation, defenses have been used almost, didn't I just read that? Yeah, let's go on. That slide is in there twice. I mentioned this last time, and I wanted to get a little bit more detail on it. So I got the picture, and this is Rendino Rondon, who lived from, as you can see, 1865 to 1958. This was his motto in life. Die if you must, but never take another life. Now, that phrase could be extended into beyond take another life. But never complain, never attack. The Course has a lot about how much we attack, how much we find problems outside there in the world. One of the first steps in doing the Course is to realize that the problem's not out there. The problem is never in the world. It's never with someone else, regardless of what's going on. That's why I would not enjoy being involved in politics without talking about politics, because it's all about arguing and debating and who's on top and who's in charge and who's got secrets and who doesn't have secrets and all the intrigue and stuff that's going on. That becomes very much an ego's world. And it's interesting, we don't want to live in that world. I was probably a Methodist minister for many years, and then an independent minister for 13 years after that. And when I was working as a Methodist minister in particular, I was just really surprised how much politics there was. I was thinking it would be somehow or another that we wouldn't have politics here, but it was all about politics, actually, when you got it right down. It just says that whatever business you're in, whatever your occupation is, whatever, it's about who knows who and the game playing that's going on. And it'd be really nice if we didn't have to deal with all the game playing. But we do it ourselves, right? So what was nice about him, he was, by the way, a follower, he was in the Positivist Church in Brazil. Positivism is actually a philosophy or a religion that was based upon the work of a French sociologist, a philosopher, whose name was Auguste Comte. And he, Rondon, was responsible for going into the jungles. He was the Portuguese leader that went in to work with the Indians, the native peoples. But his idea was not to kill them, but to see what they could do to help them in terms of bringing modern medicine to them, to becoming friendly with them. And he had a marvelous way of doing this. I mentioned last time, I'll just mention it briefly for those who don't know or didn't hear it. He took with him a Victrola, an old crank Victrola, and he would go into a place in the jungle, and he would put the Victrola down, and he would put a operatic music on, and he would let it play. And the Indians, the natives, had never heard music. Drum beating and stuff they knew, but nothing like that. And they would just begin to appear from inside the woods. They would come out of curiosity, and he would be friendly. And he came upon this one tribe, by the way, there's a picture of it there. They were completely naked. By that I mean they had never worn clothes, because they lived someplace where we have to have clothes here. But what would it be like if you lived someplace where you didn't have to, where the weather didn't require it, right? What would that change things for us in some way? It's just a matter of concept. It's a matter of we do these things in the world because we have to, because everybody else does. But this was an interesting adventure for you. All right, let's go on. So the separation wasn't just that we separated ourselves off from God. The big separation is that we separate ourselves from each other. Because there's only one mind, we are one in God. In God we are one. So that's the way we get back to God again. The way we get back to God, back to wholeness, back to completeness, is by recognizing that you and I are one. That there's no one that's exempt, I think I said it, from my love, from your love. No one can be exempt. So the Course says, your mind will elect to join with mine. Now when it says mine there, it means this is Jesus or the Holy Spirit speaking. And together we are invincible. You and your brothers will yet come together in my name, and your sanity will be restored. So we live in an insane world. I think we would all agree with that, right? It is really an insane world. It's an insane world insofar as we think that we're right and others are wrong, and we need to fix them somehow or another. I was turned on the television one night this past week, just before going to bed, while I was doing a little exercises, and I just left on what came on, and it was a show about F-15 fighter pilots and the planes, and the first guy that ever used one in battle and succeeded in shooting down another plane. And the guy was talking about how proud he was, how happy he was that he was able to kill this Syrian jet fighter, that he was the first man to ever be able to kill somebody with a F-15. And I thought, well, that's interesting, but do I want to be happy about that? This is a first thing that I was able to do? This is an insane world, Let's go on with this. So, English author Evelyn Underhill, who was, when I used to teach classes on mysticism, by the way, I might be teaching a class on mysticism at the Open Center here in New York City this spring, and for the first time ever, a class on an intro on the Course in Miracles on Monday nights. So you'll find more of that coming up in April and May. So Evelyn Underhill, she had lots of definitions of mysticism. You'll find Evelyn Underhill quoted in the book over there on mysticism more than anyone else. She says, "Mystim is the art of union with reality." So we could say God and reality are one and the same. So we're trying to get back to God, back to reality, but we have this tremendous resistance because we're afraid. We're afraid of God. And we're afraid that God is actually going to get us. And the biggest fear is, what's our biggest fear? Our biggest fear is that we're going to lose our bodies? That we're going to die? Rondon said, better to die than to take another life, right? Which is really kind of what Jesus is doing on the cross, to really show us that. By that I mean he's really showing us that as a last line of Luther's hymn, A Mighty Fortress says, "The body they may kill, God's truth abideth still." It doesn't make any difference. It has nothing to do with any kind of ultimate reality. Right? So going on. So you know who this guy is. Einstein says, reality is merely an illusion, albeit a very persistent one. It's a very persistent one in that we think it's very hard for us to realize that this whole thing isn't real. It's really hard for us to get that because it seems so obvious. The outside seems so, it's there in front of you. It's what your eyes are beholding, right? But then the Course is saying, but there's a reality your eyes of the physical nature, your eyes could never see. But there is an eye that can see, which is not a physical eye. What we could call it the mind's eye, right? So let's look over here now. Now this part is from A Course of Love, not A Course in Miracles. I am occasionally going to be, this is about A Course in Miracles, but occasionally I have developed a bit of appreciation for A Course of Love. I'll be quoted from that as well. So it says, you must forgive reality for being what it is. Reality, the true real, is relationship. Why is it relationship? I say it's because it's really about healing this relationship. So the movie last night is about a couple falling in love, which is always a nice thing to have experience, but that also involves a kind of healing, right? So going on, so you must forgive God for creating a world in which you cannot be alone. God did not create the world, but it looks as though that's what's happened. You must forgive God for creating a shared reality before you can understand it is the only one you would want to have. What is our greatest happiness? Our greatest happiness comes in relationship, in having relationships, in not being lonely. Right? There's a line in the Course which says, divine abstraction, meaning God, takes joy in sharing. That's our greatest joy. The greatest joy is that we share, and that's one of the reasons that I want to do this retreat in October. It's really to give you an opportunity to be able to share with each other in a different kind of context, which maybe means you can get a little deeper, make some friends as a part of a community of people who think like you do already, but it's nice to get to know. It's very exciting getting to know another soul, another person, and to really get to know them, right? Beyond the surface, beyond the mere facts. So you have to forgive this reality for being different than you have always imagined it to be. Right? And let's go on. So let's talk about this ego thing a little bit more now, because it's a word we use a lot. Right? Now we're back to the Course. So the ego is the questioning aspect of the post-separated self which was made rather than created. Now we have to talk about this. What we have to talk about is the difference between made and created. Right? So this world is made up. We made up this world. We could have made up this world a lot of different ways. Again, if you travel to different countries or you speak different languages, etc., you study history, you see it's been made up a whole lot of different strange ways. Or it seems strange. It may seem, if you go back, say, to the 18th century, and we'll go back to Rome or to Paris, and look how people are dressed. The rich people. All the fancy, the wigs and the... you can imagine, why would people want to wear wigs? I mean, when they had a decent set of hair to start with. Right? But one of the reasons, by the way, is because they didn't have cars. No, I mean that. What I meant was there was nothing else they could put themselves in that was a fancy thing, so all they had was their bodies to make the body fancy. So they would do what they could to make the body more elaborate or, quote, pretty in some way. And yet, as Thoreau once said, what one culture looks at and laughs at as being funny without realizing that they're creating something that's funny in the world that they're a part of now themselves. Right? We see that on America's Greatest Idols or something like that. Whatever the new version of what reality. The movie last night was about happened in the early 50s. The setting, and everybody's smoking throughout. Everybody in the whole show is smoking, and if you're over 60 or 70 years old, you may remember that there was a time when 60, 70% of the world smoked instead of 15 or 20% or whatever it is now, right? It was just the way that life was. You kind of just picked it up because I remember I lived in a fraternity house when I was in college 50 years ago, and darn near everybody smoked. The room was filled with smoke all the time, right? It's like, now we would think that's terrible. It's not even permitted. You know, slowly, we learn how to say, no, this is not, let's not go that way. So the ego cannot know the truth because it is itself a lie. And the lie is that there is no ego. And I've said many times, there will be no John Mundy in heaven. There will be no you in heaven, or whatever fantasy land but there is a you. That's what we're awaking to. That's what's exciting. Okay. So we awaken, we see it's just like we're awakening from a nighttime dream. Another definition of the ego. So the ego, which is not real, attempts to persuade the mind, which is real, that the mind is the ego's learning device, and furthermore, that the body is more real than the mind is. This is sort of emphasizing just what I was saying a moment ago. We really think that this is who we are. We really think that this is it. And yet I hope that there are times when you must realize this can't possibly be it, right? If somebody has an out-of-body experience or something would realize it. No one in his right mind could possibly believe this, and no one in his right mind does. Of course, here talking about the difference between right-mindedness and wrong-mindedness, and the more you're aware of the fact that this isn't it, then the more you're aware of the fact that there is another reality that you are very much a part of. Going on with the ego. The ego is capable of asking questions, but not receiving meaningful answers, because these would involve knowledge and cannot be perceived. We've talked about this before, but let's emphasize it. So the Course is drawing a very clear distinction between perception and knowledge. Perception is, again, what happens with the body's eyes and the body's senses. Knowledge is another matter altogether. Knowledge is actually equal to heaven. We'll talk about that in a second. So the mind is therefore confused because only one-mindedness can be without confusion. That's it. We're trying to get awakened to the one mind. As it is, we all have split minds. So we're slowly learning how to overcome the split. As we're learning how to overcome the split, we're recognizing that there isn't any difference, even though I may see a difference. You've heard me say, but what is the difference between an enlightened man and an unenlightened man? And the answer is that the unenlightened man sees a difference. There is no difference, but we see a difference. It's seeing differences that get us into problems. It gets us into arguments, that gets us into, and what are we arguing about? Ideologies, theories, belief systems, property, war. Part of the movie last night was about the Russians and the United States and having secrets and separating and wanting to be sure that one group not get a hold of the other group's secrets. Well, that was supposed to be from the 1950s, and that's what's on television these days, right? It's about who's got secrets and who's lying and who's telling the truth, and what's the secrets all about, and why we got to dig into finding about what the secrets are. Like there's some sort of, like, your ego has been out of line and I know it, and I'm going to dig up the dirt that's going to prove it. Politics was about digging for dirt. I mean, we got to find the dirt, right? What the Course is saying, you got to find the love. You got to find the truth. That's what really matters. Go look for the love, look for the truth. And all that other stuff, just you don't even see it, because it's actually not there. Even if it is there, it's not there, right? It's not what matters. Right? So perception is a continual process of accepting and rejecting, organizing and reorganizing, shifting and changing. That's what perception does. It's evaluation. We're always evaluating. Now, let's say something about the evaluation for a moment. When we're talking about evaluation, we're not talking about what am I going to put on today. We're not talking about what am I going to eat. We're talking about the evaluation of our brothers and our sisters. That's the evaluation that we're doing. We're talking about that which then further separates us, and pointing out what separates us in that sense, and looking at how much we actually relish, seemingly enjoy talking about that stuff. That's called gossip. Right? I like to gossip. Or if it's not gossip, it's something that's like that. And how easily and how frequently and how we just seem to almost enjoy it, that you can't be with somebody very long, then the topic about a third party will come up, and you're off into creating an insanity for yourself, a hell for yourself. So evaluation is essentially part of perception because judgments are necessary in order to select. So again, John Mark Straub's first realization is just how much judgment there is going on. See if you can have a conversation sometime with someone in which you make no judgments. I mean, good or bad. I mean, what are you going to talk about if there's nothing to judge? If there's nothing to analyze? If there's no good and better and best and worst, where's the conversation going to go? So back to the Course. Beyond perception, there is no judgment. When the Bible says, "Judge not that you be not judged," it means that if you judge the reality of others, you'll be unable to avoid judging your own. This is something I want to talk about more at a future time, which is the strong emphasis in the Course upon the law of reciprocal law, the most basic law there is in the universe, the law of cause and effect. As we give, so do we receive. As we measure it out to another, so is it measured out to ourselves. So when the Bible says, "Judge not that you be not judged," means if you judge the reality of others, you will be unable to avoid judging your own reality, right? The choice to judge rather than to know is the cause of the loss of peace. Judgment is the process on which perception, but not knowledge, rests. Knowledge, in the Course's terms, is a kind of pure knowing. So the thing that we do with the judgment is that judgment by necessity involves rejection. If we're saying something is better than or worse than, that means something is excluded. And the Course says you have no idea of the tremendous release, the deep peace that comes from meeting yourself and your brothers totally without judgment. That'd be nice. I said it's just not even to be evaluating it. It takes a lot to break this. It takes a lot to change this. But just to be with. I've said that mystics enjoy meeting other mystics and talking with other mystics in good part because it is the sharing. And it's not that you're judging, it's that you're actually getting to know. You're appreciating whatever your brother brings, whatever your sister brings to the table. Even the stuff that may not look so pretty, because you now are in a position of being able to help heal, of being able to help overcome the sense of separation and division. Perception makes or miscreates, leading to illusion. All of our religions, all of our culture is made up. All of our mores are made up. The ego is trapped in judgment, which keeps us from seeing. Okay, let's go on. Okay. Judgment always imprisons because it separates or segments us off reality by the unstable scales of desire. Wishes are not facts. To wish is to imply that willing is not sufficient, yet no one in his right mind believes that what is wished is as real as what is willed. And the Course is drawing a very important distinction here between will and wish. Instead of seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, say, will ye first the kingdom of heavens. Another way to do that would just be to say, know you first the kingdom of heaven. Let's let reality be what reality is. Let's let God be what God is. Let's let love be what love is, right? And you have said, I know what I am, and I will accept my own inheritance. Your own inheritance is the kingdom of heaven. It's already yours. It's already there. It's already done. This is where the metaphysics gets incredible. It's complete. You're already home in the mind of God, but it seems like we're sleeping. It seems like we're drugged. It seems like we're struggling to reawaken. And one of the ways that we do that is with concepts. And concepts, these are ideas about what's right and wrong, are learned. They're not natural. Apart from learning, they do not exist. So when a child, Paul and I both have got baby grandchildren in our lives. They're 2 years old and younger and around, who are just beginning to come into this world and just beginning to learn what's right and what's wrong. What do mommy and daddy say? What can you do or what can you not do? Or why are you crying? Or stop the crying? Or don't put that in your mouth? Or we got to go through this whole process of learning, right? They are not given names, so they must be made. Not one of them is true. We're talking about concepts now. See, this is Zen Buddhism and the Course are very close at this point. Because really what Zen Buddhism is asking us to do is to drop the concepts. What we want to get to is an empty mind. You can get to a point where there's an empty mind, which is also a mystical experience. If you can get to a point where there's an empty mind, then you can see, but you're seeing without the analysis. You're seeing without the interpretation. Seeing without the judgment. See, we're just learning here to be how incredibly judgmental we are, how we're always throwing judgment on top of everything. That's why one of the purposes of meditation is to help us to stop the mind. I mean, to completely stop the mind. You cannot be projective and receptive at the same time. So it's not till I stop the projection that I can just, well, for example, just let things be, especially other people. Just let them be. Just let them be who they are. and just see if you can't love them just fine. I think that's one of the reasons we love animals so much. Because animals have this, our dogs, our cats, they're just there. You know, they're just there in this sense of immediacy and presence. And it's not like one thing is better than another. They're just happy that you're paying attention to them, right? And giving it a little bit of time, right? Just sharing. Nothing is nicer than being petted. That's true for all of us, right? Well, I mean that. You know, it's not just the it's not just the animals, you know. So in the movies last night, my wife and I are holding hands or holding each other in bed or whatever it is. You know, it's just kind of that kind of joining sort of thing. Let me go back. Apart from learning, they do not exist. They are not given, so they must be made. Not one of them is true, and many come from furbish imaginations. We're talking about concepts now. Hot with hatred and distortions, born of fear. We think about race relations. We think about that is just such an insanity. It's an insanity that we would see some sort of difference that's based on the fact that somebody has a different color of skin, or they come from a different culture, or they come from a different group or age. We always want to see that somehow that is such a surface insanity. By surface insanity, I mean that we look just to the surface of something, and that's all that we're doing is just seeing a surface of something, and then we're saying that that's a problem, that there's a difference. There's no difference. I remember the first time I went to Russia in 1973, and it was still, we were in Cold War thing was going on, and I thought Russians look an awful lot like Americans. Of course, that's true in a lot of places, but it's just like, what are these concepts, this communism thing that we're trying to fight each other? The Cold War. The Cold War was maybe cold, but on other levels it was pretty hot in terms of the insanity that was in the mind. And the real insanity was how much money we spent on that. I mean, that was really the insanity that got us so deeply in debt. And we're still, how we're trying to figure out how we're going to get that worked out. What is the concept of a thought to which its maker gives a meaning of its own? And go on. So the whole world is built on fear and false associations made by the mind. The whole world is based on fear. What are we afraid of? So that's why I like that Rondon guy again so much. It's like when I discovered him. There's nothing to be afraid of. Think how different it would have been when the Europeans came to the United States. If rather than killing all the Indians, and we did kill most of them, right? There'd have been an attempt to integrate and to share cultures and to benefit from joining with each other. That would have been so much better than the insanity that just because it's a different culture or just because it's a different look, we have to do something about it. And no one can doubt the ego's skill in building up false cases. Not only do we see a problem, that we then, that's part of what's going on in politics right now apparently, but I'm not even going to get involved in that because I'm not interested in it. But we look for, the insanity is that you would try to build a false case. So, as I said below, this is the world, this is what goes on within the world of politics. So all things we perceive are upside down until we listen to the voice for God. So this is an important point. The important point is it's completely upside down and backwards. It's like what happens when you look into a mirror. What happens when you look into a mirror is that you do not realize that you're seeing yourself backwards. You do not, you are seeing yourself backwards, but you have no idea that you're seeing yourself backwards. Unless you've got a name tag on. Right? And if you got a name tag on and you look and then there's something is weird because the letters are backwards. You don't see yourselves as backwards. So this is why we don't get it. This is why we don't understand the nature of reality, because we're seeing it flipped around completely backward, which makes us think that what we're seeing is real all the time. What we're seeing is something we have twisted into a non-reality. We really love each other, actually. I mean, we really do. I mean, deep down inside and underneath it all, and we want to share, we want to be close to each other. And this whole idea that there's something to be afraid of in a neighbor or somebody that's a little different than us. There was a thing on TV, on the news this week about some guy who killed another guy because he was gay. I mean, what the insanity, what an insane reason to kill someone because it's in your mind that there's something wrong. It's in your mind that's got so you're going to do something that's really wrong because it's not working in your head. This is an insane world. So the world is literally upside down. And as we said, it's like looking into a mirror. All right, let's go on. So, salvation is a collaborative venture. It cannot be undertaken successfully by those who disengage themselves from the sonship. So when it says it's a collaborative venture, it means we're all involved in this. I know you work in medicine, right? So it takes a team, right? It takes a team to solve a problem. It's not like just that there may be a doctor's in charge, but actually it's a group of people who come together to solve a problem. Okay, so we have a problem. The problem is that we're all crazy. So, seeing how we're all crazy, what we'd really like to do is be sane. So how are we going to be sane if we don't help each other? And the way that we help each other is very, very simple. It is so incredibly simple. All you got to do is love each other. I mean, all we got to do is love each other. I mean, that's all we got to do. We got to just be loving at all times and in all places. And it doesn't make any difference. Let's say that you're married and that you're not getting along well with your mate. And your mate has some sort of criticism of you. Now, what do? On the ego level, you could get involved in that. And you could get into a little dialogue, which might not go too well. We call it arguing or fighting. And that usually just makes things worse, right? The truth of the matter is that could be dropped right in the beginning. That could be stopped. The line in the Course says, whoever is saner at the moment, that's a very important line, whoever is saner at the moment should be the one who stops it. And you don't stop it by saying you stop it. You stop it by you stopping it. By what I mean by that is you don't encourage it, you don't facilitate it, you don't give it any energy. You don't give it any energy at all. Remember we started earlier that the problem with that one error of the sense of separation is that we then exaggerated the error. We look for the problem. We look to deepen the problem. And now we have not just an argument, we have a war. All right? Remember the movie The War of the Roses? Which is what happens with a couple. It just gets worse and worse and worse, right? Do they kill each other in the end or something? Something like that happens, right? It's just total insanity, and it doesn't have to be that way at all. It could be totally the other way around. So God will come to you only as you will give him to your brothers. Learn first of them, and you will be ready to hear God. This is because the function of love is one. So, how are you going to love God? You start by loving the person who's closest to you. And the other person that's closest to you, the people you live with, the people you work with the people you associate with. You start there. That's how you love God. We love God first by mending the fences with the people where fence mending needs to take place. It doesn't mean you got to go out there and search for it. We're probably given plenty of opportunities just in the course of any day, right? We'll do this slide and then we'll take our break. Okay? So, man says, God help me. And God says, happy to help. Just follow my instructions and everything will work out fine. First of all, do not judge. Well, we've already said that's going to be quite a effort to learn that. Do not condemn. That's the same thing as judging. Do not find the fault. Don't look for the fault. Do not complain. Just think about that. How much time is spent complaining about anything, everything? Something didn't work well at the doctor's office, right? And we emphasize it, and we keep emphasizing it. This does not mean do not try to help, but never with condemnation. That's not going to help. God is always gentle. God is infinitely patient. God can wait. We have free will, and we will eventually make the right choice. That's the good news. We will eventually make the right, and God knows that. By the Course in Miracles says that. God knows that someday you will make the right choice. You will decide to come home. And when you make that decision, he can wait. It's because there's an infinite patience. And there's another, infinite patience brings immediate effects, which means I can just be infinitely patient right now with whoever I'm with. I will be peaceful right now, and that peace will radiate. And the other person can't keep an argument going up very long if I'm going to continue to be in a peaceful state. Jeff and I were talking just before class about the standard thing that everybody talks about a lot in this sense, driving, being in the car, and finding other people. Well, the nicest thing in the world you can do is just be a courteous driver. And let them, please, would you go ahead of me? I would love it if you would go ahead of me. Let me get out of your way. Merge, you want to merge? We can merge. Let's take a break.